Hi, I'm Chris Cooper. Welcome to the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Thanks for joining us. Spring is just around the corner, so it's time to start planning and preparing our vegetable gardens for planting. So today, Master Gardener Tom Mashour is here to give us some ideas on what we can do to get growing. And Mr. D is here to give us some tips on pruning fruit trees. All of that and more is coming up next on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South, so stay with us.
This is a production of WKNO Memphis. Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by Good Winds Landscape and Garden Center in Germantown since 1943 and continuing to offer its plants for successful gardening with 7 greenhouses and 3 acres of plants, plus comprehensive landscape services. International Paper Foundation, the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi, welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Master Gardener Tom Mashour, and Mr. D is here. Thanks for joining me.
Glad to be here.
All right, let's talk vegetable gardening, Mr. Tom.
Okie dokie.
Because a lot of people are ready to get started.
Me too.
It's been a cold winter. We're ready to get out, get this garden going. So what is the first thing that we need to do?
Well, I still am a firm believer in the soil testing.
All right.
From UT, but also I also recommend in the fall to do a pH test, because if you do need to add lime, it takes time for lime to react, 3 months, maybe longer. So if you do it in the fall and add your lime, then it has all winter to mingle with the soil and change, raise the pH of the soil. But doing a soil testing can be done anytime. As far as the pH testing goes, you can get these little testers, or if you go to any of the major nurseries, a lot of times they'll test your pH for you at no cost or little cost. Another thing I do is, as far as getting the garden actual ready, if you already got an existing garden, you're not planning on expanding it, I highly recommend to weed it. Before
important.
Right, because if you get it weeded, weeded plants do not produce seeds. And it's always just like an artist. You like to start off with a clean palette, and you'll find that through the season you're going to have to weed. I weed about every 2 weeks, but as the season progresses, it takes me less and less time, because when you take those weeds out and you throw them in the trash can, they will not produce more weed seeds in your garden.
That's right. Okay.
And I'll break out my glasses, check my notes. If you're going to expand your garden, or maybe start a new garden if you haven't had one already, one of your primary things is you want to kill the existing vegetation. Okay. And there's a couple of ways you can do it. One way is using a short life herbicide that usually contains like glyphosate.
Yeah, glyphosate.
That works very well, and it breaks down relatively quick on the soil. But there's a couple things. Number one is it only works on things that are green. The old saying goes, if it's alive, it'll kill it.
Right.
But
exactly right.
The other methods for those, but you have to, another thing you have to be watch out for is there are non-selective herbicides that have a very long permanency of a year, which they use on gravel roads and stuff like that to keep the weeds out. You do not want that in your garden. No. Now, if you don't want to go chemical route, a couple of ways. There's one, you can go ahead and dig it up, flip it over, whatever you want to do on that. And black plastic. On warm, sunny days, it will do a really good trick on it. When I had a swimming pool, which is now my garden, and I pulled the cover off to get the swimming pool ready for the summer. All right. And I take that cover and I put it out in the lawn, and I'll be out there for maybe an hour, maybe a little bit longer. And then when I go to pull it up, to fold it up, the grass is already brown underneath it. It doesn't take very long. So black plastic works very well for doing that.
Okay.
A good manual to get from UT is the Growing Vegetables in the Home Garden.
Yeah.
It's publication 901. I recommend it highly.
Yes, one of our most popular ones.
It's got all kinds of information on it. And there's also a companion one about growing vegetables organically.
Okay.
And that's available also.
And what about tilling? How do you feel about that?
Okay, well, of course, you have the two schools of thought about till and no-till farming. I tried the no-till one time, and actually it worked pretty good.
Okay.
But if you're going to put down lime, if you have to, from your pH test, the best way to get it in there is till it.
Okay.
Till it in. Or you can just go ahead and put it on top, but the problem with on top is it takes time for rain, whatever, to work that lime down into the soil. But if you till it, at least to the area maybe 6 inches, which is usually the depth of the roots, that's where you want the lime to be, down where the root level is.
Sure.
So if you do a little tilling, and normally for people who don't do no-till, this is the one time they do till, is get that lime down in the soil.
Okay. Now what exactly is no-till?
Well, no-till is where, in fact, all you do is you put your amendments, compost and stuff like that on top of the soil, and you just don't break the soil. Now there's also what they call row tilling, which I also practice.
Okay.
And that's where you don't till the whole garden. It's a little cultivator about that wide, and I till a strip exactly where I'm going to plant. And then I leave the areas between them feral, so I don't till those. The following season, I may move over a little bit and use the newer, older area, and the part that I tilled before, let that go. So, but the biggest thing you need to do too, besides the testing and adding fertilizers, is the soil needs humus. I had people telling me that commercial fertilizer killed the worms, and when they went to organic gardening, it took 3 years for the worms to come back. Well, my philosophy on that is, more than likely, these people did not add any humus to the soil. And like when they had the coal mines close up in the Appalachians, the smart people moved out. Well, the same thing. It's the same thing with the worms. If there's nothing for them to eat,
just leave.
You're going to leave.
Right.
And that's the reason why it takes on, because it takes them a while. So 3 years ago, oh, hey, there's some food over here. Let's go get it. But you do have to add humus to the soil. Okay. Either on top with the no-till or till in. I save my grass clippings and my leaves, and they go directly into my garden without composting until I get enough in there. Then it goes into the compost bin, the excess. And I do not import grass clippings and leaves from other yards because I have no control as to what they put on the lawn. True. And one year at home at the Plant Row for the Hungry, somebody brought in some really, really, really dark green grass clippings. And I had some reservations about it because usually they've been fertilized commercially. And usually when they do that too, sometimes, I won't say usually, but sometimes they put down weed killers or herbicides. Right. And before I knew it, they had already spread them around the whole 100-foot row of cucumbers. Oh. And 3 days later, they're all gone. Wow. They all died. Right. So it must have been some type of herbicides in it. Probably. We tried replanting twice, and nothing would come up. So that's one of the reasons why I just do not import other people's leaves unless I personally know more. And in fact, I take care of my neighbor's lawns, so I know it's on their lawn.
Well, that's real smart. Now, before we leave, raised beds, quickly. What do we need to know about raised beds?
Well, raised beds are kind of expensive to start. It costs quite a bit of money to fill them up, lumber and so forth. But everything I've seen about them, they do fabulous. They're much better than in the ground. You control it. You never have to till it again. You usually don't have to add, you do have to add more stuff to it because as it decomposes, it starts going down. Now there's another version, what they do in Holland. It's called Dutch raised beds. Lumber is very expensive in Europe. So what they do is they don't actually raise the beds. They scoop out walkways about 12 inches deep and about 14 inches wide. And all their tractors, the wheels are spaced to go down those tracks. How about that? So they they don't raise the bed, they lower the walkway.
How about that? All right, thank you for that information, Mr. Tom. There are a number of gardening events going on in the next couple of weeks. Here are just a few that might interest you. All right, Mr. D, let's talk about pruning fruit trees. What do we need to know?
You know, when I spent 12 years down in Mobile, Alabama, and this week we would start pruning fruit trees. Usually around the middle of February, we'd start pruning fruit trees. A little early now here in the Memphis area. Probably need to wait until the middle of March at least.
Oh, the middle of March,
yeah, depending on how late a winter we have. The main thing to remember is you want to make sure the winter chill requirement has been satisfied on fruit trees before you prune. Now that probably happened around December the 15th
I think that
this
happened
year.
already. That's
So
right.
the winter chill requirement has stopped, and as soon as it gets warm, things are really going to bust out, I guarantee you. But you don't want to prune within 48 hours of a hard freeze.
Okay.
And we haven't had 48 hours go by without a hard freeze as long as I can remember.
It's been a while.
So probably I would probably hold off until around the middle of March. And you know, things may be in full bloom then, but that'll be fine.
Oh, so it's
It is
okay.
perfectly okay to prune fruit trees while they're blooming. Grapes, muscadines, even if they bleed a little bit, it's no problem. You know, you can put a Band-Aid on every cut if you want to, but it doesn't hurt that grape or muscadine to bleed. It's probably better to prune a little bit late than a little bit early. Now, we have some other issues with storm damage. You know, ice damage fruit trees and shade trees and things like that. And that you kind of treat that a little different. I mean, Mother Nature has already done the pruning on those. She's already gone in there and she's broken things up, and we have quite a bit of that up in my area.
Okay.
A lot of fruit trees and ornamentals that are broken down, broken all to pieces. And you got to make a decision. You know, some of the ornamentals are going to have to come out. You know, be taken out.
Right.
You have to make a decision about whether or not you need to take the tree out, or you can go in there and prune. But you can go in and clean up limbs that have broken off, you know, due to ice storms and things like that. It's okay to go and do that now. Clean it up, and keep in mind you don't have to be in any big hurry though. You know, even though the limb breakage occurred very quickly, you don't have to be in a big hurry to get out there and try to straighten it out. Don't jump the gun on taking trees out, because trees are amazingly resilient. They can tolerate a tremendous amount of damage and still come through. The one thing I would not do is go in and dehorn a tree. You know, take all of the healthy limbs off of it in addition to the damaged limbs, because this is stressed, really stressed a lot of our plants, and they're going to need all the leaves and limbs and photosynthesis this summer to recover from this stress. This has been a tough winter, a real tough winter for our trees.
Wow. Now, how do we go about pruning certain fruit trees? Like, let's talk about peaches, for example.
Okay. Well, you basically treat peaches, plums, and nectarines the same way. We prune them to an open-centered system.
Okay.
It's called the vase system.
Okay.
Upside-down umbrella. I've seen it described, but you take out the center of the tree. You have 3 or 4 main scaffold limbs.
Okay.
That are your main limbs, and you cut off anything that's going back toward the center of the tree. Any limbs that are growing out, you prune them above a bud that's growing to the outside if you want that limb to continue growing out.
Right.
If you want to force a limb up out of your way, if it's in your way from your mowing, when you're mowing or spraying or whatever, thinning and all those kind of things, you can cut the limb below a bud that is at the top of the limb, and you'll force the limb will go in the direction that that bud is. If you want one to go to the right, it will do that too. Wherever that bud is on the limb is the direction that the limb will grow. But peaches, plums, and nectarines, you prune to an open-centered system. You want to open that up so that you can, have the sunlight can get in, and you can get good coverage with your pest control materials that peaches, plums, and nectarines require.
A lot.
They have to have the fungicides to control brown rot, and they have to have the insecticides to control the plum curculio. If you don't do that, you're probably wasting your time. You're going to have wormy fruit, unless you like wormy fruit. Worms are high in protein, and you can go that route if you like. Now, Apples and pears, you do completely different. It's almost the opposite. You prune those to a central leader style. You've got one central leader. It's not an open-centered system. You have one central leader like a Christmas tree.
Okay.
And you will have whorls of limbs kind of evenly spaced around the tree, about 3 or 4, maybe 5 limbs evenly spaced around the tree, about 18 inches, nothing. Another whorl of limbs going around the tree, evenly spaced, 4 or 5. Another 18 inches of nothing, and you continue on up the tree as high as you want to work a tree. And I like to work trees from the ground. I don't particularly enjoy climbing up on a ladder in soft ground and pruning and thinning and picking. But you just, as high as you want to go, you can continue going up the tree. Now the dwarf trees that we have, a lot of them have dwarfing rootstock, and you can pretty well manage them, 10 feet, 8 to 10 feet, something like that. I won't let a peach plum or a nectarine get over 8 feet tall, something I can reach with my 2-foot long lopping shears. I would rather work that tree from the ground.
Okay. And since you mentioned the shears, now do we need to dip those in some type of solution when we're making the pruning cuts, or how do you feel about that?
The only time it's necessary to dip your pruning shears in a solution that's 1 part chlorine to 10 parts water or 9 parts water is if you have a bacterial disease present, such as fire blight on pear trees and things like that. But regular pruning, no, it's not necessary. It's not necessary. Okay. No need to dip. When you're out there pruning, just make sure your shears are sharp. Yeah. You don't want to, have dull shears and cut it halfway and then peel the bark down, 8 or 10 inches below your cut. You don't want to have long stubs. You want to have about a 1/4 inch stub, and that'll give enough, wood tissue for there to be a nice even scar. Where you make your cut. You don't cut it right flush with the bark, because then it'll be kind of a depression inside the bark when it heals. About a 1/4 inch stub. And if you have a limb that's broken right now, that's broken out like 12 inches, 36 inches, go on and don't cut it right out there where it's broken. Go on and cut it back to the trunk of the tree. But again, wait a little while. It's a little bit early to start pruning your fruit trees.
Okay. Let me ask you this quickly. I heard somebody mention using latex paint for those pruning wounds. Can you do that?
No, it's not necessary.
Okay. I heard somebody mention that.
At one time, there used to be sealants that you could purchase, and we learned this with the pecan industry. Hurricane damaged pecan trees. When you tried to treat those pruning wounds or limb breakages with a sealant of any kind, it actually created more of a problem because it keeps the wound from being able to dry out. It holds moisture inside the wound. Trees are very good at putting a natural barrier between injured tissue and healthy tissue on their own. Just let them do that. So the only reason I would use a latex paint would be if I wanted to keep a tree from breaking dormancy early. And you'll see in the pecan growing areas down south, every young pecan tree will be painted white, and they use gloves with latex paint. They rub up and down the tree, but it's to repel the sunlight, to keep that tree colder longer. Keep it from breaking dormancy too early.
Matter of fact,
all right, there you go.
In California, all the orchards, they paint the trunks white, walnut trees and so forth, and there it's to reflect the heat, to work as help to keep the trees a little bit cooler because of the 115-degree temperature we had in the San Joaquin Valley.
Okay. That's some good info right there. All right. You ready for our Q&A session?
Sure.
All right, let's jump into it. Here's the first question. Good question, too, for this time of the year. Can you still compost now during this cold winter we're having? What do you think about that?
Well, actually, you can still go ahead and get your leaves and grass clippings and stuff like that. Chances are pretty good nothing's going to happen, but it's ready to go as soon as it starts warming up. And you do maybe want to mix it, stir it up. And one of the things about composting, it says, you know, you want to have equal portions of greens and browns.
Right.
Greens being grass clippings, browns being leaves. Well, wait a minute, we get grass clippings one part of the year and we get the leaves another part of the year. So what I do is I save my leaves in bags, and then when I start cutting the grass, I'll go ahead and put the grass clippings in, and then I'll throw some leaves on it out of one of the bags, and I'll just keep layering them. Of course, the next thing they tell you after you go through all that trouble is turn it.
Yeah.
So, you know. But the whole idea of layering them is to make sure you got the proper proportions.
Right.
Not a whole lot of greens out there right now.
Absolutely.
Not a whole lot of
Not
greens.
too many. Okay, you had any
Lots
thoughts
of
on that?
brown, lots of brown.
Any thoughts on that, Mr. D? About composting now?
No, I would exactly what
Yeah.
Mr. Tom said. You know,
Yeah.
put
Real
it out
slow
there.
process during this time of the year.
Compost happens. It's going to be slow this time of the year.
It's going to be
It's
real
gonna
slow.
It's going to be a while this
Yeah.
time of year.
Microorganisms not working quite as fast during the cold weather. Okay, here's our next question. Last year I had a problem with squash borers. As Mr. Tom laughs, what can I do this year to prevent them? Did you send us this question? Okay, you laugh.
I've been trying all kinds of different things. One thing I am hoping for is that the larva that's in the ground that comes up and does the damage, hoping this cold will kill it. Now I try some different things. This year I'm going to try, I have some couple ideas. I had a class up in Tipton County at the museum, and it was going to be a question and answer time. And
Right.
that was one of the questions I brought up about that. And some of the cures I heard was that you put down some that garden wheat block or garden cloth, and plant them in there, and the larva that does the damage. And you always notice that the damage is right at ground level. That will block them from coming up. Another person said take the powdered 7
Okay.
and put a circle around the plant, not on the plant, but around the plant, because you know you always got the time between putting down 7 and harvesting, so many days. By putting it around the ground, you don't have to worry about it.
Before you go further, I'm looking at Mr. D. He's shaking his head over there. So,
Okay.
What do you think?
Well, for the part about treating the ground, and keeping the larvae from coming up and getting on the plant, that's not going to work because the larvae doesn't start out in the ground. The female lays an egg down at the base of the plant, and the egg hatches, and the larvae bores into the plant and goes on up the plant. So it's where the female is laying the egg. It's not laying it in the ground. So so that's not going to help you a whole lot. The 7, I was nodding on the 7 until you said don't touch the plant with it. And when you said don't touch the plant with it, then that's not going to help you a lot either. Most insects, we say, wait until you have a problem and treat the insect with whatever you can, organically or inorganically. That'll do solve your problem. There are a few that you need to, if you want to control them, you pretty much have to go with a preventative insecticide spray. Plum curculio on peaches, plums, and nectarines is one of those. Peach tree borers are one of those. And an insect that's closely related to the peach tree borer is the squash vine borer. And it's another one of those that you need to go with a preventative spray. There's several products that are out there. One of them is an organic product. Spinosad is an organic product that's in our red book that we recommend to use. Also, the others that are not organic are carbaryl 7, bifenthrin, esfenvalerate, and permethrin, which are 3 of the pyrethroid types. The pyrethrins originated from mums, chrysanthemums. So, is that organic or not? That's a question there. The synthetic pyrethrins are not. But all of these, if you start out and spray just the base of the plant, you don't have to spray the whole plant. And these things are not systemic. So that's going to help you on your problem with harvest interval and all that. But follow the label with any of these products, and there's a maximum number of applications you can put out per season, but follow the label and they'll take care of it.
All right, that's some good information, Mr. D. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. Be sure to connect with us. We'll send you weekly email updates about Family Plot. Just go online to WKNO.org and sign up under Get Local Show Updates. The email address is familyplot@WKNO.org. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Chris Cooper. Be sure to join us next time for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by Good Winds Landscape and Garden Center in Germantown since 1943 and continuing to offer its plants for successful gardening with 7 greenhouses and 3 acres of plants, plus comprehensive landscape services. International Paper Foundation, the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.